The Springwood slasher scales down to 1/10. This is your look at the Iron Studios A Nightmare on Elm Street Freddy Krueger art scale 1/10 statue. Freddy Krueger is the central character of the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise, and is one of the greatest horror movie icons of all time. As an assassin of children, he was burned alive by the vindictive parents, coming back as an evil spirit that kills teenagers in their dreams, also killing them in the real world. Immortalized by actor Robert Englund, who played him in 9 films, Freddy Krueger is now the addition to the Iron Studios horror series 1/10 art scale line. Before we get a closer look at Fred Krueger, the first thing we're going to want to do is figure out how tall the statue stands. Now, I opted to go with the standard release of this. There are technically 2 versions. The standard release comes with a pentagon display stand that you're currently looking at. The deluxe version gives you more of a flooring from his boiler room, and that one equates to being about a $60 difference. I may actually still consider the idea of picking that one up, but let's not speed things along. Of course, we want to be looking at this one first. The statue of Freddy Krueger stands 7.6 inches in height. We can switch that to centimeters, revealing that the statue is 19.4 centimeters tall. And seeing as we've already had a look at him, we'll just move over Freddy Krueger. No, we didn't have a look at Freddy Krueger yet, but we did certainly have a look at Jason Voorhees to kind of give you guys the difference of how they scale with one another. I suppose you could say that they're properly scaled. I mean, again, Freddy Krueger's got slightly bent knees, but they're about, I would say accurate to how they appear in the film. Of course, when we really are doing the best comparisons, you'd want to be comparing Freddy Krueger with the Freddy vs. Jason. But seeing as we don't have a statue of Freddy vs. Jason, we're going to instead revert to the one that we had looked at before, more or less pulled from Friday the 13th Part 3. Like with Jason, though, Freddy comes out of the box in 3 parts. His main body, minus, of course, his severed gloved hand. That's a separate piece. And he, of course, comes with also that display stand, similar to the one that we looked with Jason Voorhees. We'll go ahead and look at the display stand first. As you can see, it's basically just a pentagon shape. I'm so used to saying hexagonal, but certainly not hexagonal in this case. You've got a singular peg hole at the top. And yes, it is still an awful magnet for fingerprints. You do pick up these pieces for yourself. Certainly getting a side chamois, just to wipe that down, may probably come in handy. Flip this around and make sure it's all lined up. On the back, you've got Iron Studios Horror Series Art Scale 1/10 statue, A Nightmare on Elm Street, and then below that, Freddy Krueger. I didn't mention this when we had a look at the Jason Voorhees, but one thing you'll see probably left off here that we normally tend to see when it comes to these statue releases is felt feet, or rubberized feet. These ones actually don't have them. So when you are putting this on a surface, I would probably advise picking it up, moving it over, and putting it down instead of sliding it across the table. Not only are you going to be causing damage to your table or your shelf or wherever you decide to display this, but you're probably going to be also causing damage to the bottom of this. You'd hate to scuff or wear away that font printed on below. Then we can have a look at Freddy, then we can have a look at Freddy's glove. Now with Jason, the glove works the exact same way. There's a little magnet on the bottom of the glove and it fits securely into the socket of the forearm, just with that magnet. Where we've certainly had a look at cases in Freddy in the past with both figures and statues, usually the case tends to be that you can go ahead and rotate the glove, like this. You can't do that, unfortunately. Based on the fact that you're matching shape for shape, the rectangular plug on the bottom of the glove and the rectangular socket that goes into his forearm, there's only really one way that you can put this in place. I say really, but technically there's another way as well. But who's going to display Freddy Krueger looking like that? It almost looks like he's hitching a ride awkwardly. So yes, there's only really going to be one way to put this in place. Now the statues are hand-painted polystone, so you will want to be careful when you are putting the glove in his socket, simply just because these individual fingers are more probably susceptible to breaking. Going back to the idea though that these are hand-painted polystone statues, I feel one thing that isn't polystone is the blades on the ends of Freddy's fingers. By the way that they reflect, and certainly when I feel them, they feel like they could be potentially metal that they've added to each of the ends of the fingers. Well, again, the rest of the statue is all hand-painted polystone. Again, we can bring Jason in again just for simple comparisons. You can see there's the Jason and the Freddy respectively. And I did like the Jason. One thing I commended Iron Studios for was the paint job that they did to Jason. I feel that carries over well also to Freddy. The only thing I really didn't like about Jason was I found like his head was maybe just a little bit too big, or it was sitting too far down into the socket or into the area of his shoulders, where it looked like it was just a little too low. By comparison to that, I almost feel like I like Freddy just a little bit more. He doesn't have the most movie realism to his face. I feel like he comes across a little bit more slightly animated, but I'm really happy with how the head sculpt turned out. And equally so, points I think should be awarded to Iron Studios for the paintwork that they did to these pieces. The head sculpt is stunning. As you can see, the scarring added just the right bit of coloring to it. Not too much, not too stark. You have a nice natural blending of the lighter flesh tone, and then the more scarred areas have that darker red incorporated in there as well. The teeth, as you can see, are painted in there as well. They're not grimy. They're just like little tic-tacs of white. You can also see as well, they've outlined the eyes, the irises, as well as the pupils. It's a good-looking head sculpt for Freddy Krueger, though again, just slightly more animated. If you are curious, the fedora is not removable. You can't take that off of Freddy's head. I do think they did a good also job on the fedora, with a notable hole there on the front, just to add a little bit of wear and tear, I guess, to it. You can see also that they've stitched an actual sculpted stitch of where the rim of the hat attaches to the rest of it. I think that's a real nice job. Again, you've got all these little scratches and rips and stuff like that, as you can see on the fedora. I'm really happy with how this one turned out, especially when you're looking at it from the side. I think it really does look good on that side or also on that side as well. Straight on also does look good, but I think that's where you lose a little bit of the movie realism. I think just keeping it from just on certain angles, I think is really where you nail that likeness. Now again, going back to the coloring of these statues, one thing that these Iron Studios statues are really good for being is the paintwork. I really commended the fact when they came to Jason's shirt that they went in and sculpted all the details to the shirt, even if the shirt didn't necessarily need it. Obviously, Freddy has more of a knitted sweater, so you'd think that they would gone in there and made it look like a stitched sweater, a knitted sweater. And I think they did a successful job at that. It looks like little tiny boomerangs stacked on top of one another. I'm also really happy with the coloring that they went with on this. Normally, of course, Freddy's sweater is your traditional reds and greens, but so often at times companies want to deviate away from that color palette that Wes Craven decided to go with initially. The off-red and the off-green specifically was hard on the eyes, and yet I feel like they've watered that down with later released Freddy's. Iron Studios, I think to their credit, went back to basics and gave us the more traditional looking Freddy colors, that slightly off orangey red and that very sickly looking green. Really does work well on this statue. You can also see that they've added some additional washing of black just on the bottom of the sweater and the areas also on the sleeves of the sweater as well, where you've got some natural rips. I'm really liking the way that that turned out as well. Now we can move a little bit further down on Freddy's statue here and getting a good look at his pants. You've got the natural draping of wrinkles and the way that the pants naturally would sit on somebody's legs. You can see there's some real considerable wrinkles happening on the back of Freddy's pants here. There's no real additional color. They've kept it only just to the black. A lot of the color is really kept to his hands, which we didn't really spend a whole lot of time talking about. Let's actually just move away from Freddy's pants for a second. Everybody who's interested in Freddy's pants now immediately got disappointed. Quickly just looking at Freddy's hands here. I kind of wish that the fingernails were painted in just a little bit more. And for some strange reason, there's like a real sharp line right there dividing this one finger. Actually, even a couple of these fingers look like they're separate and maybe have been added on after the fact. But again, you got some nice, decent paint incorporated to the surface of his skin. Okay, let's move back to his pants. Everybody's like, whoosh, back to the pants. I do like the fact that even though there's not a whole lot of additional coloring, they've kept it only just to the minimal black. You can see that they've added some nice texturing to the surface of the pants, and that's a really nice touch. Just gives a little something extra to these statues. And of course, when we get down to Freddy's boots aren't the same black, though it may look like that here on camera. They're actually just a slight shade of brown incorporated to those actual boots. They're not quite the same color as the rest of his pants. I like that. It's not just a continuation of black all the way down. And of course, to finish off the look, we're going to go ahead and take Freddy's peg on the bottom of his feet, and we're just going to line it up to the peg hole located on the base itself. There's a couple of obvious ways. Once you get it in place for yourself, just wiggle this in. Sometimes I find it gets a little stubborn to get in there. But once that's in place, I mean, you can move the statue around if you want to get the desired look. I'd like to maybe have Freddy Krueger more, not off like this, but more dead center. And like I said, you've got yourself a neat looking statue. So just move him down over here for 1 second, and we'll reach off to the side here and bring in Jason, because we've already, of course, had a look at him. Let's go ahead and get him on the display stand as well. You know, of the two, I feel like I like Freddy just a little bit more. I know normally I'm a Jason guy, I feel, more than Freddy. But I find like these statues pair well together, even though they're technically sold on their own. Jason, I don't believe, ever got himself a deluxe release. However, Freddy did. For some reason, I decided to go with the standard route. I think I went standard simply just because Jason also has just the regular black display stand, and I wanted to keep these consistent with one another. If you do pick up, however, the deluxe version of Freddy, you're essentially getting the same statue component of Freddy, but what you're getting in swapped place, instead of the Pentagon display stand, you're getting that flooring of that boiler room. And that might be a route that I may consider going with down the road, but for the time being, I'm happy to present and display Freddy Krueger next to Jason Voorhees, the one that we looked at before. So the standard issue art scale 1/10 Freddy Krueger statue cost me about $110 online. And again, I feel that's very affordable for getting a polystone statue of the Springwood slasher. But if you did want to upgrade your purchase, instead of paying the $110 for the standard release, I think the deluxe version was about a $50 difference. And what does that give you? It gives you the same Freddy, but it gives you a much more elaborate display base, mimicking the one of maybe something in a boiler room environment. Had some floor grading, it had some railings on the side, and even had a little pipe. It's really interesting. You should check that out. The only reason why I didn't go the route of the deluxe release, even though I know it would be a more elaborate looking statue, is because I want to keep this consistent with the Jason that we already had a look at. And I don't think Jason ever got himself a deluxe release. Correct me if I'm wrong. Being that being the case, I really did want to have these statues sort of look like they're from the same line. And best way, of course, to do that is to keep the bases the exact same as well. It's not to say that maybe down the road I may not shell out the $50 difference or the $160 price point total and not still pick up the deluxe version. And maybe if I do, I'll do a comparison and show you guys the difference between those two statues side to side. I don't think there's really anything from a paint standpoint, and I believe it's the exact same Freddy Krueger. Now, of the two statues that we already had a look at, of course now counting Freddy Krueger in the mix of things, I still think I like the Freddy just a little bit more. The Jason was good, but I think still the problem with his larger head and his head sitting too far down into his shoulders made the statue look a little jarring. I don't feel I get that jarring experience when I look at Freddy here. I like the proportions. I like certainly the pose that they put him in as well. I think I'd be more inclined, to display him slightly on an angle instead of straight on. If you look at it straight on, I think you get a little more of that vibe and that read that he looks a little bit more, not cartoonier, but he doesn't have as much that movie realism going for it. But if you get it just slightly, that sweet spot on an angle coming up right here, yeah, that's nice. What's also nice about these statues as well is the paint applications that they applied to both of them. One of the things I commend Iron Studios for doing when it came to their Jason, even though I was still a little on the fence about that head sculpt, and I still feel I am, that paint really delivers the best thing on that statue. It is definitely by far the best thing on that statue is the paint job that they incorporated. And Freddy as well gets that too. Traditionally, of course, Freddy Krueger goes the red and the green routes. And I feel like as we get later released statues and later released incarnations of Freddy Krueger, that sickly green and red got more to a comfortable looking red and comfortable looking green and even borderlining black. Iron Studios, to their credit, went back that sickly route of giving him that puke green color along with the red, the visually distorted colors that Wes Craven picked for a reason. I like the fact that Iron Studios seem to have more traditional looking Freddy Krueger colors on a really nice sculpted knitted looking sweater as well. Again, I really like this one quite a bit. I think of the two, I prefer the Freddy Krueger over the Jason. But let me know down below in the comments section what you guys think of the statue. As for the question of today's video is, what is your favorite Nightmare on Elm Street movie? Let me know down below in the comments section. Also, if you're new to the channel and you're liking the content you're seeing, be sure to hit that subscribe button down below. It can also do you a service by hitting that bell notification to give you those friendly reminders of when new videos will be popping up. I can also throw into the mix some extra 411 to tell you that Monday to Friday, 12 p.m. and 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time is when new videos will be popping up. And you never know, perhaps the Springwood Slasher may make a few more reappearances in some upcoming videos. So keep your peepers peeled for that. And as always, guys, thanks for watching. I'll see you guys next time.